Hi, my name is Flávia Mouri Castro. I am Senior Coordinator here at iFarm Organics International. I have been working for iFarm Organics International since 2010, mostly focusing on participatory guarantee systems for organic agriculture, or PGS. Today we're going to talk about PGS, and I'm going to show you a little presentation that I have prepared for you. So, welcome to this webinar on participatory guarantee systems. These are the main points of my contribution today. First, we will talk about the rationale for guarantee systems in organic agriculture. Then we will look at the concept of PGS and the work that iFarm Organics International does. Then we will talk a little bit about peer review, which is one of the key specificities of this approach to certification. Then we will briefly look at some figures and understand the current status of PGS around the world. And I will also talk to you about strengths and challenges of PGS. One important thing to keep in mind throughout this webinar is that each PGS initiative is unique, adapted to fit the specific contexts in which it will operate. So, first of all, we start with the simple question and a simple answer. What is a PGS? Essentially, a participatory guarantee system is a guarantee system or a quality assurance system, which is composed of three essential elements: standards for a specific kind of quality, the process to verify conformity with those standards, and a logo, which is the graphic representation of that. This simple answer doesn't really talk about the specific kind of quality that the system is ensuring. So it implies an understanding of what quality assurance systems are. I imagine that you might have a bit of experience with certification, whether of a product or of your own. Maybe you have obtained some kind of a professional degree, for example. So you went through a process and you also obtained your certificate. Or you purchased a product that follows specific guidelines for its production, and there is a logo on the label of the product that you looked for when you were purchasing that product, right? So basically, this is the definition that iFarm Organics International has adopted for PGS in 2008. These are locally focused quality assurance systems that certify producers based on active participation of stakeholders and are built on a foundation of trust, social networks, and knowledge exchange. As you can see, this definition also doesn't refer specifically to the quality that we're talking about. So what is it that we are certifying? If we go to the market, if we are looking for organic produce, we might be able to spot an organic product by looking for labels, such as the ones that you see there. These are logos that are used by PGS initiatives all over the world, and they are normally placed on a product label or on a stall if we're talking about a farmer's market. You can also see them on the websites or t-shirts promoting the produce there. So the logo it's a very clear way to understand, or a very clear element of a guarantee system. It's actually, you could consider it as the face of the guarantee system. And it is also a statement for the producers that offer the organic produce, as much as for the product itself, saying this was produced following specific guidelines. As from our perspective, iFarm Organics International, we are looking at organic quality. So essentially those logos, or any logo that we would be looking into, they convey the message that this is an organic vegetable, this is an organic product, I am an organic producer and on the certificate. And as I said, this is not different from other forms of certification, especially agricultural products carry some of those logos. So let's talk about organic agriculture briefly so that we understand the rationale behind guarantee systems in this specific production sector. So if I ask you what is organic agriculture, maybe you can have an idea. Maybe you're just getting into the topic now. There are different definitions, and the organic movement was actually founded over 100 years ago by visionary pioneers. They saw the connections between the way we live, the food we eat, the way we produce our food, our health, and the health of the planet. So the concept organic arose in several parts of the world, and some of those pioneers, they use different terms, biological, for example, and eventually this specific term and this definition that I'm going to put on the screen for you was adopted by IFOAM Organics International only quite recently in 2005. After almost 3 years of work by a designated task force that reflected on the 4 principles of organic agriculture and came up with a way to express what kind of contribution organic really wants to bring to the world. So the principles are reflected there: principle of health, the principle of ecology, the principle of fairness, and the principle of care, and the words that are highlighted in this definition. And as I said, these principles and this definition, they inspire the organic movement in its full diversity and guide the development of our positions, our programs, and of course, our standards. So if we think about organic agriculture, the principles we talked about, how do they relate to guarantee systems, to certification? Interestingly, if we look at all the reasons why people adopt organic practices or why people promote organic agriculture, we can see that in many cases there's no relation, no direct relation with guarantee systems. Food and nutrition security, or improving soil fertility, or trying to achieve sustainable development goals. None of those reasons actually require any organic assurance. It is only when we go to the market, only when it comes to trade and market, that integrity, in this case organic integrity, becomes an issue. So why do we need the guarantee system for organic agriculture? On one hand, we have the farmers that are producing according to specifically the defined organic standards, and they can serve the consumers' needs for specific products that are healthy and that are environmentally sound. The farmers, they adopt specific practices, often quite knowledge and labor intensive, and they would like to achieve also good sales, sometimes often also with the premium price. And the consumer is requesting assurance that the products they are buying are actually organic, have been produced according to specific guidelines, and willing to pay a higher price for them. So in order to create the trust that all stakeholders want to see reflected there, we have a guarantee system. That's essentially the purpose of a guarantee system in organic agriculture. It is there to build trust. So we go back to the definition of PGS, and I would like to call your attention to the words that I have highlighted there. First of all, PGS are locally focused. very important. They certify producers. This is a certification method. There's no doubt about that. And participation, trust, social networks, and knowledge exchange are all essential for that. As I said, this concept was only adopted in 2008, but the initiatives practicing it already existed many years before. The terms participatory certification or alternative certification were more commonly used back then. And they were basically implemented by pioneers that wanted to make sure the claims they were making, that they were producing according to specific guidelines, they would actually be understood by other producers and by other consumers. And also in some situations, in particular at the end of the 90s, in various countries, initiatives started implementing PGS because they did not agree with the model that was adopted around those decades of third-party certification in order to ensure organic quality. They did not agree with the third-party certification model for various reasons. This could be economic, political, philosophical. Economic, because the costs of certification have always been quite a burden for small family farmers. Political, because normally certification bodies would be international stakeholders coming to a certain local context and making local decisions, influencing the lives of the farmers there. And philosophical also because the idea that the guarantee has to be generated externally, so through an independent party, which is essentially how third-party certification works to achieve impartiality, was not accepted by many of those groups. They saw that producers working together with consumers and other local stakeholders were able to implement processes in order to make sure they could generate this guarantee from within and achieve impartiality, not through independence, but through participation. This is basically a historic moment to illustrate the gathering that iFarm Organics International organized in 2004 together with the Latin American agroecology movement, MAELA. This was the first time that initiatives from all over the world gathered and talked about their alternative approaches to certification. That was the beginning of the concept of PGS. After this gathering, iFarm Organics International called for an international PGS task force that worked on the definition, on the key elements and features of PGS, and basically helped structure a bit what we now understand, all this conceptual framework that we are talking about now. It's important to mention that because this definition was also a collective effort, and so should PGS initiatives be. So as I said, since 2004, we have intensified our work with alternative certification approaches, in particular PGS, and we have been dedicating more resources to disseminate them. Based on this idea that we stand for the full diversity of organic agriculture, including different forms of verification of compliance with organic standards. Initially, a lot of our activities focused on the development of this conceptual framework. So we have the definition, key elements, some documents and practical tools, some guidelines. But also we started to work together with governments, especially governments that regulate organic agriculture and don't recognize alternative approaches to third-party certification. Looking for support and recognition of PGS. Compiling, collecting and compiling data is also very important for our work. We manage the global map of PGS initiatives, and we are the only organization doing that at a global scale. In addition to that, we provide a variety of services for facilitation and capacity building for PGS development and implementation. And we also have created the official iPhone PGS recognition program. This offers access to a specific logo for PGS initiatives that want to use this institutional support in order to get more visibility or to get more recognition in their legal contexts or within the organic movement in their countries. So PGS actually, as I said, developed before third-party certification became the mainstream approach, which it is now, to verifying compliance with organic standards. But in many places, it was introduced, especially in the late 90s and beginning of the 2000s, because third-party certification was not able to fulfill all the needs of the small marginal farmers, the small family farmers, and not only for certification, but also for market access. Because bringing the produce of small farmers to the market requires, yes, if we're talking about organic, it requires certification, but it also requires training, extension, and marketing support. So, as we have seen so far, PGS are essentially systems to verify compliance to standards for organic agriculture to ensure organic guarantee, just like third-party certification. But the essential difference is that PGS initiatives also offer supporting functions besides the monitoring or controlling functions that a third-party certification offers. There's this also major difference, as I said, that the guarantee is generated from within and not through external verification. And all of that is only possible because of stakeholder participation. So, stakeholder participation is key at all levels of PGS implementation. So starting from the first steps in developing a PGS initiative, we look at adopting specific standards. Which standards are we using? How are we adjusting those standards to our specific setting? Designing all the procedures that state how the PGS initiative is supposed to work. They also participate in the verification process through the peer reviews, and we will talk about that in a minute. And most importantly, all stakeholders are involved in decision making. So when we talk about who decides on certification in a PGS, we say the farmers have also a say on what is being decided. So this is not an external decision. This is actually a decision that comes from within. That's why the guarantee is generated from within. Let's then look at peer review, or the verification process that is used in PGS. This is the clearest expression of stakeholder participation in a PGS, of how the organic guarantee is generated from within. And the main specificity of PGS. So peer review. Ideally, from our perspective, the way peer reviews should take place is that each producer involved in a PGS should be visited at least once a year for the verification of compliance with organic standards. A peer review would happen essentially with a team. So we have a peer review team that is composed of at least one other producer, a peer, and a consumer, or it could also be a final consumer, it could be the representative of a buyer, it could also be a technician or an NGO working together with the producer, representative of a producers association. And then at this review that will take place at least once a year, there will be different moments where the team will go through the field and observe what is happening there, ask questions to the farmer. The farmer is also allowed to, are even encouraged to not only ask questions, but also manifest some of the needs, concerns, referring to different aspects of the production. And then there will also be a review of documents. Record keeping is very important in organic agriculture, and for PGS, this is no different than in third-party certification. The kind of documentation that is requested might be different, so in order to be adapted to what the farmers, the producers involved in the system can actually deliver. But the kind of information that is needed is essentially the same. So the peer review team goes to the farm, asks questions, review documents, and at the end of a peer review, a report will be generated. And normally this report already includes the certification decision. So the team that took this visit together with the farmer will come to a conclusion on whether that farm should be certified organic or not. Very important. Normally in a PGS, this whole farm approach is used. So the certification is given to the area and the farmer managing that area. It could be that a few steps further are needed in order to formalize the decision, but the farmer already at the end of this annual peer review will be able to know what is his or her status regarding certification. I like to show this picture, these two pictures to sort of illustrate these essential differences we've talked about between third-party certification and PGS, but it's important to keep in mind that these are two complementary approaches. Yeah, the systems are different, and you can easily decide which one to adopt according to the context in which you are operating. If you're selling at the local market is not regulated, there is no need to look for an international certification body to ensure you are complying with organic standards. You can develop a PGS initiative instead. But if you want to sell at the international market, you need to look at the requirements in that specific market. If you're targeting the United States of America, if you're targeting Canada, if you're targeting Japan, or if you're targeting any country that is a member of the European Union, then third-party certification is a requirement. There's no way around it. Furthermore, there are other aspects to look at besides the market, the reality of the farmers, and especially a cost-benefit analysis on what would be the best approach. We are not, very important, we are not talking about what kind of rigor is used in order to carry out the assessments. Yeah, there's no question on whether PGS or third-party certification is more strict in checking the standards. This is really not a point for discussions. Both systems are equally trustworthy in order to ensure organic compliance. But the important thing is this, that in third-party certification, the interaction between the farmer and the guarantee system is very limited, mostly to the annual farm inspection that takes place or that is carried out by a trained external inspector. And this external inspector is actually not allowed to give technical advice to the farmer. When it comes to PGS instead, that's the picture where we see a lot of people gathering and discussing and looking over a document. There's usually a lot more intensive interaction between the farmers and the entity that is managing the guarantee system. Other farmers and technical staff, as well as consumers, can be involved in different ways. So essentially the producers are co-owners of these guarantee systems, and they are involved, as we have seen, in all steps from design, review, appointment of people involved, and taking up specific roles. I said PGS has monitoring and supporting functions. Yeah. So I wanted to mention here what are the objectives of a peer review. It can also be called farm review. In some cases, it's called farm inspection, yeah, or peer inspection, etc. Whatever the term is, the objectives remain pretty much the same. So we need to monitor the implementation of the standards. We need to check the practices of the producers, and we need to look for evidence, just like at an audit in third-party certification. But the main objective is not that, not even the resulting certification decision, which takes place after the peer review. The goal of a peer review is really to make room for this learning process that is so important in PGS. Basically, PGS integrate capacity building as part of conformity verification, so that farmers and reviewers, they solve practical problems in order to enable producers to better comply with standards or to improve their practices. That's why we say that PGS is not only a guarantee system, but also a capacity building tool. We normally also refer to two types of producers involved or as members of a PGS initiative. We have the certified producers, the producers that have managed to go through a peer review and had their practices assessed by their peers and get a certificate, and producers who are involved in a PGS but not yet certified. They are basically learning, improving their practices in order to be able to have a positive assessment and access to PGS certification once they are ready. And yes, this is an exchange that basically goes beyond monitoring and control. So just a quick recap now that we're pretty much at the end of our chat for today. In addition to the information that you see there, so the PGS existed before, third-party certification became mainstream, they developed independently in different countries. We had the first milestone PGS development in 2004, and since then numbers have been growing. There's also a lot of interest also beyond the organic sector for participatory approaches. We see also a lot of international cooperation efforts supporting PGS development. And there's also a lot more interest from governments, which can be positive and negative depending on how the strategies are elaborated by governments and how involved the actual stakeholders in the PGS initiatives are in policies that support this approach. A lot of this growth is related to the work that we have been doing to promote the concept of PGS, advocating for its recognition, even within the organic movement, and some of the work that we do through projects as well. So let's look at some figures. At the global level, Those are our figures that we have published early this year in 2002. We have observed an increase in PGS initiatives, despite some of the difficulties that were faced in the past couple of years due to the pandemic. But yes, we have about 240 PGS initiatives in more than 70 countries, and at least 1 million of producers involved, close to 2 million by now, with data that we will be publishing next year soon. And yeah, we have about 1,200,000 producers that are certified through PGS. It's important to mention that a lot of those producers are based in India, where there has been a lot of governmental support for PGS. We conduct surveys biannually, and that's how we get the data. We also get data through our global PGS map. And we publish this information every year through the publication we have jointly with FIDO, and this is available online. As you have seen, there has been the numbers are quite impressive. This means that there are lots of producers actually benefiting from PGS all over the world. And there's often the question whether PGS can be used for export. So, as I have said, there's no reason why the guarantee generated via a PGS initiative should not be the same or have the same value as the guarantee generated via third-party certification. Okay, this is fundamental. But it is important to consider that long distance, anonymous value chains, normally for commodities in general, they have benefited a lot from third-party certification, and the trust that external independent audits generate. So much so that in many cases they have made it into regulations for the organic sector. And it's true that organic certification requirements are different, as I said, depending on the markets that the producers are targeting. In non-regulated markets, any guarantee system can exist. And currently there are about 70 countries regulating organic agriculture, and 15 countries that have included PGS in their regulation. From our perspective, basically, we see PGS has this local focus, and also because of how the direct interactions, how the direct relations between stakeholders can take place, so that participation is really existing. But a product that is PGS certified remains an organic product, even after it crosses a border from our perspective. I wanted to briefly mention also the main differences between third-party certification and PGS, as you can see from the table, summarizing those differences there. We have professional services normally delivering third-party certification, while in PGS there's a mixture. It can be voluntary up to professional. The aspect of independence is really highlighted in third-party, while participation is the way to generating impartiality in PGS. Third-party certification often operates according to international norms for organic agriculture, but not only, while PGS certification is adopting normally international principles, but locally adapted to the realities of the farmers benefiting from them. Normally, to access international markets, third-party certification is needed. PGS often is really offering access to local, regional, or unregulated markets. And in countries where organic agriculture is regulated, third-party certification is the accepted or sometimes required approach to certification. PGS, as we saw in the previous slide, is recognized only by a handful or 15, more specifically, countries currently. And also an important difference is that third-party certification will look at certification, will have monitoring and control functions, while PGS combines other functions as well, such as capacity building and marketing. Now, another very important point I would like to make here, because I know this is an important issue also for Sri Lanka specifically. So many people see PGS as a form of group certification because farmers work in groups, but it is not true. PGS and group certification are two different things. When we talk about group certification through internal control systems, we are under the mindset, we are in the same kind of approach as third-party certification. We don't have enough time to talk about that in this webinar, but it is important to know that PGS is different from third-party certification, and that ICS is within third-party certification. Yeah, so group certification and ICS are in the same category of third-party certification. The main difference between PGS and group certification through ICS or third-party certification is that the main decision makers in PGS are the farmers themselves and the main stakeholders, that the certification is granted to each farmer individually, at least ideally, yeah, or even when it's given to a group of farmers, that each of them receives an individual certificate. And especially very important is that the farmers that are certified through PGS, they have free access to any marketing channel they decide to use. So they are not restricted to selling through the group and to collective marketing. So with that, we come to summarize the challenges, the strengths and the challenges of PGS. We look at the strengths. We have a certification that is more suitable to small producers, that supports them in accessing markets, and that promotes ownership and responsibility, building producers' empowerment by involving them in all the processes. It also allows for continuous learning, for continuous improvement of practices. And as we look at a whole farm approach, it favors diversified production systems. So we're not just looking at one specific commodity, but we're looking at the farm as a whole, and that also promotes food security and nutrition. And especially it builds on long-term relationships between producers and consumers. This is basically how we would summarize the strengths of PGS. And we have seen the trend. There is a growing number of PGS initiatives and PGS certified farmers all over the world. This is all related to the potential that those initiatives have to better serve small farmers, accessing local markets and supporting the organic sector overall. There are challenges too, of course, and these are the main ones. So we have a high degree of dedication or voluntary engagement often required. The investment in capacity building is in the long term. We're talking about a complex social organization, so things can take time. Decisions require the involvement of various people, and there are different needs that will emerge at different points of the process. So all of that needs to be nicely managed. And there's, of course, the fact that there are many countries that don't recognize PGS, so that limits the possibilities for implementation and marketing as well. And in general, those are less applicable for long-distance anonymous marketing of organic products. For all the challenges that I have presented here, I would like to emphasize the essential role of the local organizations that implement PGS initiatives, producers and consumers associations, different NGOs, national organic agriculture movements. Their role in supporting the farmers, not only to get organized into local PGS groups and to build the PGS initiative, but also in offering training, both in organic agriculture and PGS development. This role is essential. They support and manage information, they participate in peer reviews, and also help in creating marketing channels. All of the services are linked to PGS as a whole. And as I said, the supporting functions are as important as the monitoring functions of PGS. So this also brings us to a final reflection on costs. Yes, PGS certification can be cheaper than third-party certification, but it can also be more expensive if we count in all the time that is required, depending on the setup that we're going for. So we cannot say which one is the best choice. It depends on the level of organization of the producers, the access to technical expertise, the level of commitment and availability, and so on. So it's essential, before deciding to implement a PGS initiative, to conduct a proper assessment and to understand what the needs are for stakeholders, the market, and yeah, with that, I thank you for your attention, and I invite you to visit our website to learn more. I would like to thank you for watching this webinar, and feel free to get in touch to have access to more information. Thank you.